Hey, hello. Welcome back to another video. I'm Fiona. If you've not been here before, I'm an illustrator and I love filling sketchbooks. So today, this is just going to be a chill sketchbook doodling time. I'm just sitting down with no plan of what to draw, just drawing what comes to mind and trying to fill up a page spread today. So for a little drawing challenge, what I'm doing is I'm going to be drawing in pen only with no pencil sketching first. I don't do this very often. I really do use pencils and erasers as a bit of a crutch, so I do think this is a really good little exercise. It really forces you to actually think about the lines that you're using and draw decisively and be bold about it. So I'm recording this voiceover afterwards, so yeah, there were definitely some, oh no parts where bits of anatomy went very wonky, but we keep moving, we keep drawing. It's only a sketchbook after all. The whole point is to be loose about it and make mistakes and all of that good stuff. One piece of feedback I used to get a lot when I was at art college was that my art was quite stiff, basically. That my lines were sort of overthought and it made my figures look not very lifelike. Which, as you can imagine, was not very nice to hear at the time, but looking back it was very, very true and I needed to hear it. So that's something I keep in the back of my head all the time when I'm drawing. And the best cure I've found for that sort of stiffness is just forcing myself to draw faster. Like when I sit down with a pencil and an eraser and I get really finicky over every little line and spend ages getting each one perfect, what I find is when I zoom out and look at the whole drawing, it just sort of looks a bit dead. Like my figures look like dolls or like cardboard cutouts kind of, rather than real people. But when I make myself draw with a pen and I keep reminding myself to go faster and faster, I find that my drawings might be less technically accurate, but they actually look alive, like I've captured like a moment of motion rather than a still thing. And that's what I'm always looking for in my own art, because to me, energy and personality and that sort of thing are so much more important than strict accuracy and anatomy. So yeah, the reason I'm sharing this with you is the hope that it'll help you to, if you struggle with that sort of stiffness in your art as well. The best advice that I can offer for that is just draw faster and faster and don't let yourself erase too much and it will loosen up in time. It's just a matter of time, really. But anyway, the main thing that I was going to talk about today is I wanted to tell you a little bit about my art journey. Sorry for the cheesy phrase. But yeah, I'm just going to ramble about how I got to where I am with my drawing, because it's a long story, and the kind of phases I've gone through with it, because I think every artist has a different path. And yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. But yeah, this is kind of a long story, so, get comfy, grab a cup of tea. Maybe you can get your sketchbook out as well and do some drawing, and it'll be like we're having a little drawing coffee hangout. Or, feel free to mute me if you just want to watch the drawing, because the story is kind of unrelated to what I'm drawing, actually. Okay, so I guess I'll start at the beginning. I really wasn't one of those people who always totally knew that they would be an artist from the age of, 5. I actually wanted to be a vet for a long time, and then after that I wanted to be a lawyer all the way through my teen years. I have no idea what I was thinking with that. I would be a terrible lawyer. I think I just played too much Phoenix Wright and I had this idea of what it would... Anyway, so I went to university when I was 18 to study English literature because I didn't really know what to do, and that was just a subject that I liked a lot at school. That was my entire thought process. And then when I got there, I had a big crisis, freaking out about getting all into that student debt without a plan. And basically I dropped out straight away, within 2 months I dropped out. And then I went and worked in an office admin job for a year in a financy banking type of sector. And I absolutely hated it. It's funny how sometimes really negative experiences can be really valuable though. Because although I hated that job so much, I'm really grateful to it for teaching me that I should never go into a career like that. That was a really useful piece of information to learn about myself at a young age. I think sometimes to figure out what you want to do, you have to just try things and figure out what you actually don't want to do first, if you know what I mean. For contrast, right now, I work part-time at a cafe as a barista to support my art, and I much prefer that to office work. I'm the type of person that I just can't cope sitting at a computer all day. It's really bad for my brain, but I'm much happier to make lattes and sweep floors and stuff. That's just me. But anyway, so some point in that office job year, when I was about 19, I decided I wanted to be an illustrator. About 19 when I made that decision to start taking art seriously, and that was when I started looking at maybe applying to art colleges. And I already felt really, really behind, because when I looked on YouTube at people's portfolios and the art they were using to apply to these courses, these people had clearly spent every waking hour since they were born with a pencil in their hand drawing. And I had done a little bit of drawing as a teenager, but never really a serious amount. So yeah, I basically felt really behind everyone else my age when I made this decision of what I wanted to do with my life. So while I was still at that office job, this was about the middle of the summer by then, and I was aware that I would need to apply to university the following spring for an autumn start the next year. I just started throwing myself into drawing. I would get home from work at 7 p.m-ish, and I would just draw and draw into the night, and all weekend I was watching every art tutorial on YouTube I could find. I was taking books out of the library about teach yourself watercolor and stuff like that. I was doing everything I could do. And by the way, at this point in time, my art style looked nothing like it does now. I used to draw in this kind of grayscale realism style. I was drawing realistic graphite portraits of celebrities and dogs and stuff like that, which is kind of weird to think about compared to what I do now. But I think finding your true art style is just something that doesn't come for quite a long few years when you first start drawing. So at the time I was just thinking, I need to learn the basics first. I'll learn anatomy and value and stuff like that, and the rest will come later. Around then was when I went and did a foundation art course at my local A-level college as well, which is kind of a step below degree level. I was just so aware that I felt really behind, and I had lots of years of drawing lots of years of not drawing to make up for if I was going to compete with these other really experienced kids for this small handful of spaces at the art college I wanted to go to, which was ECA. I had my heart absolutely set on studying illustration at ECA in Edinburgh. I did not want to go anywhere else, but I was also very aware that this was a college that had about a 5% acceptance rate of the people who applied. But yeah, somehow, and I still don't have a clue how this happened, I did manage to get into ECA, which was insane. I remember I was home alone when I found out I was accepted. I had nobody to immediately tell. So I remember I was running up and down the hallway 5 times, just screaming. I was so excited. But yeah, so I was off to Edinburgh, ECA. This was 2016 at this point, I think, that I went to ECA. And oh my god, when I got there, I was a tiny, tiny, minuscule fish in a very vast pond. The thing that nobody warns you about getting into one of these very competitive art schools is that every single student around you was the very best artist in their entire high school. Each individual one was the best in their school, and suddenly you're surrounded by 30 of them. It's terrifying. Pretty much everyone else there was yeah, I've known I would be an artist since I was 8. I've actually been doing professional artwork commissions for several years. I have 50,000 Instagram followers, all of that stuff. So yeah, I was petrified. So I continued working as hard as I could, but I was just not there yet, experience-wise, to get the most out of the course, if I'm being honest. And I did really struggle with it. Looking back, even though I'm so grateful I got in, I was just not ready, and I should have taken a few more years to figure out what I wanted to do with my art and improve my drawing skills before I went. I would have gotten so much more out of the course. Because the way, I don't know if other courses are like this, but this is the way ECA was. The way the illustration degree worked is it kind of assumed you could already draw, and it didn't teach you how to get better at drawing itself. Instead, the course was teaching you how to apply your drawings to communicate effectively. But I could still barely draw that well yet. So it was like trying to run before I could walk. I did learn a lot, but I was so very out of my depth. My art itself at this time, my art had kind of moved away from the realistic, like pencil portraits, more or less. I was starting to experiment with ink and markers and stylization a bit more. I was really inspired by comic book art at the time. I really liked Saga, I really liked Rat Queens. I loved the Witch comics by, I think Alessandro Barbucci is his name, but the Witch comics were amazing. And I really loved Studio Ghibli as well. I always have. At the time I was using a lot of like pen and ink, Pentel brush pens. I loved those. I was being a bit more experimental with watercolour and gouache, that kind of thing. And I was enjoying myself, but I was still really struggling skill level wise, I would say. I only really liked about 10% of everything I drew, and I was still really slow as well. A single drawing would take me days. I had really high standards for myself inside my head, and I was constantly disappointed at myself for not meeting them, basically. The art from around this time does still exist, by the way. If you can be bothered to scroll back on my Instagram to like 2017, it did exist. Please don't. But the main point is, this art, it didn't feel like me, basically. It just felt way too serious. I was trying too hard to just like make this really amazing art, like all of the like comic book artists and YouTube artists that I loved. And it just wasn't happening fast enough, and it was so frustrating. My overall relationship with drawing was not as casual and relaxed as I wanted it to be. I had it on this pedestal in my mind where every individual drawing was just taken so seriously, and it always had to be an art piece. I did use sketchbooks at the time, but I didn't really treat it properly as a sketchbook. Instead, I would try to do like a proper finished painting on every sketchbook page for some reason. I would never in a million years dream of doing straight pen doodling the way I am in this video. I would never dream of drawing anything without ultra careful pencil sketching first. That's how I was at the time. And I never even really liked anything I produced. And honestly, it was exhausting. I always wanted to be the kind of artist who could like whip out a sketchbook on the bus and do a quick doodle and be so chill about it. But it was like I was just mentally blocked in some way. I had this weird, unhealthy relationship with drawing where I felt very imposter syndrome-y and like I was forcing it, and every drawing was just a struggle. And I was really embarrassed about showing my work to anybody as well. Some time passed, I graduated, and after graduating I still felt really lost for a long time. So previously I'd had this idea in my head that I was supposed to launch straight from graduating into a fabulous full-fledged freelance career, but that was absolutely not the case. It rarely is the case for anybody, I've since found out. I had like improved skill-wise a lot during the course of the degree. But honestly, looking back at the things I was making right after I graduated, I still just wasn't ready for professional work just yet. So I kept practicing and filling sketchbooks. I was working retail at the time. I worked retail for a little while, and then it was bam, the pandemic. I won't dig into it too hard, but honestly that was a really tough mental health time for me. I had no idea what I was doing. I was still really struggling with the frustration of my art being just nowhere near as good as I wanted it to be. And it was still feeling really inauthentic to me. I had nothing resembling any sort of career. Honestly, I was feeling really stupid for even trying to pursue art at all. Like I felt like I'd messed up my life. It was a really like negative brain space I was in around then. But then around like late 2020-ish, something just unblocked in my brain. I felt like I'd been playing this constant tug of war with my art for years and how I wanted it to look. It was always such a struggle and it was never good enough and it made me miserable. And eventually I was like, hang on, am I not supposed to be enjoying this? Like this is such a difficult career to try to break into. Literally, what is the point if I'm not having fun? And I decided to just drop the tug of war rope with that fancy Instagram art style that I was trying to force. And I massively changed the way I draw. I simplified it a lot. And that was when I started developing the art style that I use now, which just feels so much more like the real me. I started allowing myself to make more like sloppy, casual work. I started making myself draw faster. I went from only producing really finished, stiff drawings to post to Instagram to just not posting at all for ages and drawing silly stuff, like ugly, fun stuff, just for my own amusement, basically. I stopped thinking along the lines of how do I make this drawing pretty, and I started thinking, how do I make this drawing fun and enjoyable for me to do, basically. And actually, that was when I started to get professional commissions coming in after I stopped caring too hard about how it looked. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, finally, at long last now, I am that artist who can casually whip out their sketchbook and doodle. I finally have that fun, low pressure relationship with drawing, which feels really good. And I have a part-time job in a cafe now, and I work on my art career stuff 3 or 4 days a week. I have my Etsy shop, I do some commissions, and I sell prints and stuff at a lot of in-person art and craft markets. And like, when I'm like standing behind my work at these markets and strangers are picking it up and looking at it, I've actually realized like I don't feel ashamed of it anymore. I don't feel uncomfortable about the idea of people looking at the art. I'm actually kind of like, it feels weird to say it, but I'm actually kind of proud of my work now, which is absolutely huge for me after all these years, honestly. I'd say I like about 70% of what I make rather than 10% a few years ago, which, yeah, like I said, it feels huge, feels good. And I would say the way I draw now is closer to a lot of the media that I loved as a kid, although that isn't really intentional. I don't know if anyone else can see this, but I see a bit of like Nick Sharratt influence in my work. He's the illustrator who did the Jacqueline Wilson books, which I really loved. I see a bit of Adventure Time as well in the way I sometimes do like wiggly limbs, and in the way I sometimes draw trees and mountains. And I do think there's a lot of Studio Ghibli influence in there as well. It all feels natural though, you know, like I'm not trying to draw like any of these things, it's just that I've absorbed them and I'm doing my own thing. I don't know, it feels nice, it feels natural. Like I'm finally in a really good place with it after all that struggling and fighting for a long time. So one day I would really like to go full-time with my art. I'm nearly there money-wise, but not quite yet, because I do live in a kind of expensive city. So I've still got a ways to go, but it doesn't feel so impossible anymore, you know, like I'm getting there bit by bit. It's good. I would say if you are still in the struggle zone still, that's how I'm going to refer to those years, the struggle zone. If you're still there and you want to take one thing away from this video, I would say it should be that you need to allow yourself to make ugly art that is fun to draw. If you're not enjoying drawing, then literally what's the point? And if it feels like you're forcing your art style, then you probably are, unfortunately. You just gotta let it come naturally, you gotta let it take its time. It's really important to remember the distinction that the art you enjoy looking at is not necessarily going to be the same as the art you will enjoy making yourself. Like, it's okay for those to be two separate things. Which sounds kind of obvious to me now, but it really wasn't at the time back then, because all of that really fancy, beautiful Instagram art that I used to try and be like, I still really admire that stuff. I've just realized that I don't enjoy spending, 8 hours rendering a portrait. It's just not me. I think that learning the art style that suits the way that you like to work is linked to learning about who you are as a person. Like, I've learned that I don't have that kind of patience. I like to finish drawing in one setting. It is very rare these days that I'll spend multiple days on one thing, one piece. And that's okay, it's okay for all kinds of art to exist. And then, there are plenty of people who do love spending weeks or months on a single oil painting. I respect those people so much, but I've learned that that isn't me and I can't force it. So yeah. Anyway, I never know how to end these rambles. Respect if you made it all the way to the end. I think I just wanted to share all of this to see if anyone can relate to it, like the whole path of deciding to become an artist as an adult and forcing all this practice to try and catch up, and then ending up finding myself making this art that felt forced, and then finally figuring out at long last what I actually wanted to make after years. I guess the way I've gone about it doesn't feel like the natural way to do things, and I've not really heard anyone else describe it. But I would love it if you told me in the comments about your own art story. I would be fascinated to hear, especially if you have come to art later on. But as for what I'm drawing, yeah, I should actually talk about the drawing in the picture. But as for what I'm drawing, yeah, I should maybe actually talk about what I'm drawing here a bit. So this is a mixture of Pinterest drawing references and stuff from my own brain. The moths are made up. These are not any actual species of moth. I've just been interested in them as a motif recently. And the capybaras, I don't need any reason to draw them because they're amazing. And the song lyric is from one of my absolute favourite songs of all time, Dreams by the Cranberries, which was in my head while I was drawing, so out it came onto the page. The sketchbook, by the way, this is a Nina Cosford sketchbook. This is my first time trying one of these, and I do really like it. The paper is really thin and smooth, which is something I really like in sketchbook paper because I use markers a lot, which don't play nicely with thick textured paper. I also really like the page size and shape. It's a bit bigger than A5 and the pages are a bit squarer, so it's nice if you think A5 is too small and A4 is too big. It's right in the middle. I just feel like I have enough room on these pages for the drawings to really spread out, but it's still small enough to spontaneously whack out on a cafe table or on a train table. But yeah, not spawn or anything, I just really like it. But I'll write down what I've used in the description so you can see. Okay, I will wind this video down at long last. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you soon. I have a little mini A6 sketchbook tour video going up soon, so keep your eyes out for that. But okay, that's all for now. Bye!